All right, all right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are listening to DJ LP on Passion Radio. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're okay. I hope your week is going well. I hope your life is wonderful and abundant and full of love and happiness and joy and iriness. Simple iriness. That's all I wish for you. And also for the person, the special lady that is joining me for today's show, sister, my dear sweet sister.
Greetings.
Greetings, my sister.
Hey, so lovely to be here. It really is.
It is, isn't it? And lovely to see you. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time this afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm well. I'm well. Just like to give thanks and praise and just kind of smoke up the place and,
Yes.
share the ancestral vibrations that, because we walk many different pathways.
Yep.
But it's always a joy when I connect with you and because we're so much on the same page. We share almost like a parallel life.
Yes.
And it's great to be out there doing the work, but know that sister like yourself is just out there too. It gives me energy because lifts my spirit. So just raising up the spiritual vibes that come forward to enable us to do this work and
Yes.
to move it forward. And even sometimes we don't know where we're putting our foot, but we just know we need to just keep taking that next step. So I say ashe to you, sis. Ashe to your ancestral energy, inner chi.
Thank
Yeah.
you. And
Thank
Shay, reflected back in
you.
all of your glory, in all of nature and creation's glory. Wow, it is so true what you say, about our steps. Sometimes we don't know where we're putting the next foot, but we're going to put it down anyway. And we walk in faith and trust that, guidance is always there for us. We're always in the right place at the right time. And sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but, we keep going. We certainly do. So this is our second official conversation. The introduction video that was introducing you and your business circle ceremonies, tree circle ceremonies, is actually on FACFO TV and on our YouTube channel as well. But for those of them who are late coming to the show, who are late coming to FACFO, who are yet to know of your greatness, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Oh, blessed love. Thank you so much for presenting me this opportunity. My name is Aama, and Aama means tree of life and crown. It's Kemetic.
Oh,
And I embraced that name a few years ago now. It's my official name, but it was, I embraced it in terms of a reflection of the journey, spiritual journey that I'm on in this dimension.
yes.
So, when my mother passed in 2011, I heard the word celebrant. And that was in direct connection to the fact that I was organizing her service with my brother and sister, and a little bit frustrated with going through the hoops that you have to go to, but also for whatever reason, because I'd done a lot of ceremonial work in the past, I had an idea about what I wanted, and I just wasn't afraid to ask or request or put it out there. And I really, really give thanks for that insight that I had already, because it can be quite daunting when a close relative passes
Mm.
and you're just launched into this other world which you don't see, you're not aware of until something actually happens.
Mm.
So I always say that, my mother really guided me. I say she taught me the art of dying. And as she transitioned, she just downloaded to me big time. So when I was wrapping up my business with the funeral directors, they practically offered me a job.
Wow.
Um, and at that point, I really got present to what I was actually doing. It wasn't just, an emotional, passionate daughter burying her mother, but also I actually had quite a lot of inside knowledge that I wasn't aware of. And so the woman said, when I said to her, "Well, what is it that I'm doing?" I actually asked her, I said, "Well, what is it?" She said, "Well, you're a celebrant, aren't you?" And that is the first time I'd heard the word. I went home and Googled it.
Right.
Um, and I was looking back, I could see that this was a clear guidance from my mum, because as I Googled it, called the company, and I spoke to the director of the company. She actually spent nearly an hour speaking to me on the phone, and within a couple of weeks, began my training,
Wow.
basically to become a celebrant. I actually trained to be a celebrant for weddings and child naming, um, which I did first. But the biggest training, the most intense training that I did was a diploma in funeral celebrancy. And for me, that was the end game, that was the end goal for
Yeah.
me, because I'd started the journey um, because of my mum and because of what the frustration that I found with dealing with this Victorian kind of very outdated way. I mean, don't get me wrong, they were very friendly. They cared for mummy very well. They were very tolerant of all of our, you know, ways that we wanted to. I was able to dress my mum. I was actually hooked up with an embalmer who I
Right.
found out through a friend of a friend, and
Right.
she worked with me to visit mum, and we had a discussion, and she said, "No, you don't need to even worry about that." She gave us support in terms of dressing, moving the body,
Yeah.
how all the steps. I just feel that my mum was really guiding and opening up the opportunity for me to have those experiences. So everything just lined up and everything just kind of happened, and I
Yeah.
just turned up and said, "Yep, okay, this is what's next. This is what I need to do next." So after all of that, it was really clear what what the next step was. You
Yeah.
know, um, I got a lot of what can I say? Not restriction, but blocks, because I was unemployed at the time, and
Okay.
it was the start of the new training initiative, but nobody wanted to support me through training to be a funeral celebrant, and nobody would even tell me why that was. And luckily for me, the woman who I was connected with the training company, she was confused. She was like, "Well, this usually takes weeks to sort out what's going on." So I think for her, being a white middle-aged woman who lives out, she didn't live in, I think she lived in Hampshire or somewhere like this, experiencing what it's like in a city as a black woman entering into this, nobody was taking me seriously.
Yep.
She was, in fact, writing letters on my behalf. And it ended up that I had to write to the head of like the job center. I had to kind of start getting in touch with directors and saying, "This is application's been turned down several times. Nobody's given me a reason why. What's going on?" So it took 2 years, a situation that she said should only take weeks for me to actually get the application, to get onto the program, to start my training. So it wasn't until 2013 that I actually qualified. And you know, after I put in that complaint to the directorship, it took, after that, it was, I think, within 2, 3 weeks. I mean, literally within a week, I got a call. Oh, Emma Child, can you, and everybody started jumping around because I the directors were like, what's going on? What's the
Yeah.
issue here? You
Yeah.
know, so the people on the ground. So I'm telling that story because A, I didn't choose this, it chose me,
Yes.
this journey. And B, it's not easy. Do you know
Yes.
what I mean?
Yes.
Easy because you're kind of opening up a different area, arena. A lot of people who are in this are almost like registrars. There is no, they, you know, you go for a job description and there's no category. The only category you can go to is registrar. But being a celebrant in the UK and Europe is not a legal profession. And that's why I think a lot of people maybe don't take this move, but it's only in certain places because a lot of parts of America, New
Mm.
Zealand, there's a lot of countries where it is legal, you
Yes.
know, and have the same rights. We're trained exactly the same as registrars.
Mm.
Um, but we're not given that legal respect and authority. I believe that that will change, and the more people that do get in, and the more like yourself who formed FACFO, and the more we kind of have our own institutes
Yeah.
within that. And I think as pressure groups, because there's all kinds of pressure groups going on
Mm.
to put pressure on registrars and the government to say, you know, this should be legalized.
Mm.
But that's a different journey because I feel as people of color, melanin rich people, and as women, we got our own struggle going on, you
Yes.
know. So
Yes.
in a way, I'm kind of highlighting that, but it's not my main focus at the moment because I feel at the moment we need to reclaim our heritage within the industry. So the download came, and tell me if I'm talking too much because I will just go on.
No, no, keep going. Just flow. Just flow.
Right.
Just just let me clarify then. So
Yeah.
you would
Go
say
on.
that this is your calling. This is you,
Absolutely.
right. You
Yes.
came to earth
Yeah.
to do this.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yes. Absolutely. The way opened in such a dynamic way, and I remember standing, if I can go back to when I heard the name Celebrant,
Mm.
and I was talking to this funeral arranger and this very traditional funeral directors. It was the end of a very long and emotional process. And she said, "You're a celebrant, aren't you?" And as she said that, there was something that happened where I had a flashback of all the ceremonies I had ever done. And it
Okay.
was like, oh, actually, this isn't my first time. I've actually been doing ceremonies for a long time. I've been doing, you know, even when I was a performance artist, a storyteller, even when I was on stage, you know, with my little guitar and drumming and all of this kind of thing, it was always a spiritual energy that I was communicating through. And I've been asked by friends and family to do funerals for their grandmothers. Um, the first ceremony I did when I qualified, which I felt totally unprepared for, was a stillbirth. And so I'd already had that experience of washing bodies. I went to Jamaica with my mother to bury my grandmother, and I really saw the harsh reality
Yes.
of death. And I think that in itself has really prepared me because we have death very pretty in the West. We're very pretty. Everything's lace and in nicely dressed rooms, and
Yes.
you know everything. We don't see the harsh reality of death. Few of us now actually care for our deceased at
Yes.
home or are dying until they die at home. We don't have that experience because of nursing homes and hospice and you know just the whole just the circumstance. Um, it's not always open to us. So I do feel that we're detached in a lot of ways from death. So for me to go to Jamaica and really see the harsh reality of death, to
Yeah.
see the mysticism in what a nine night can actually do. You know, when you them elders are singing and chanting and really walking up nature, you know, and you really get that connection with nature and with moving spirit. And just see the reality of a nine night means you are feeding the village, you know, you're feeding your families. And you really get the other end of the meaning of a lot of those rituals and practices that we do. It kind of made me realize, yeah, we need to keep this. This is part of our energy. As a, I, you know, consider myself in the diaspora, a woman of color, you know, Africa, Caribbean, UK, you know, it's almost like I belong to all and none at all in a
Yes.
sense, you
Yeah.
know. So I'm finding my balance within the rituals, within, you know, the dynamic of being here, and realizing that this stuff's in me,
Yeah.
you know, and just accepting the fact that it is in me. I did some work with I did a lot of grief work with Maladoma, with Sobomfu Same. I was part of her ancestral healing village for 3 years. And I did a lot of grief work, and working with them and studying their material really gave me uh, it allowed me to express myself. You know, it allowed me, you know, Sabomfu was always like, yeah, just go on. And Maladoma really says that we need ritual, whatever it looks
Yes.
like, however it is, however it presents itself, we need ritual. And they both speak very deeply about the fact that grief, if it's not expressed correctly, actually becomes toxic within the body, and not just the body, because we're all connected in family and society. So a lot of the ails that happens within us, particularly within the diaspora, is the trauma
Yeah.
of, you know, the trauma of slavery, the trauma of displacement. Bless you. Sabonfu says that's a blessing. When you sneeze, that's a
Yeah.
confirmation, you know. So give thanks for that.
Absolutely. All right. It's always with me, it's always two sneezes, and I know that means something. It has
It
to.
does. It does.
Okay.
Confirmation.
Right.
Confirmation. So grief work just is something that has always been the heart and soul
Mm.
of everything that I do. And coming through now as a qualified funeral celebrant has really given me kind of like the backstory and the professionalism to
Yeah.
say, okay, I've done, you know, I've studied the spiritual aspect, you know, looked into the rituals of it. Now it's time to kind of bring the professionalism in, because I feel that that is a gap that needs filling within our society. That I had an elder mentor many years ago that said, Amma, you know, the people of other cultures are the first ones to see us coming into the world, and the last ones to see us going out to the world, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So for me, that really struck a chord that still resonates today, that I
Mm.
think it's just so important that we empower ourselves, and that we are the ones that welcome us in, you know, as young, and bless us and send us off across the veil. Those powerful moments in our life of coming and going from this dimension, I think it's that is the passion for
Yeah.
me. You know, that is the passion. That is where we can all aspire to make a difference. And I think with Tree Circle, my strap line is all the ceremonies of life and your ceremony your way. Because as a woman in the diaspora, I really celebrate and honor all of the African cultures, the
Mm.
Caribbean cultures. I
Mm.
celebrate all. There's so many spiritual opportunities out there, so many spiritual cultures out there. So
Yes.
I'm not um I'm very curious, and I'm interested in how we bring that to the forefront. So whenever I meet somebody, it's always about, well, what spiritual culture are you, and how best can we celebrate you?
Yeah.
And it's through having that attitude and that momentum that I've now been known as somebody who does Rasta services as well. I did a couple of Rasta ceremonies, and then got interviewed, and now that is something that people know that I do. And, you know, I was within Rastafari for many years, 20, 30 years of my life,
Okay.
within Rastafari. I love Rastafari, you know,
Wow.
as something that holds us as a people. I love Kwanzaa and the Kwanzaa principles as something that holds us as a people. So any way that I get an opportunity to express these things through ceremony and through what we do, I think it's really important that that comes through. And even if you don't have a name for it, you
Yeah.
know, for what you're feeling needs to be done and honored. I think it's important that it doesn't matter. The fact is that you get to express that.
Yes.
Because just like for me, when my mother passed away, I got a download. I
Yeah.
didn't know what was coming, but I
Yeah.
got a download. And I think it's all of those kind of things when we're actually experiencing that death journey. The living are breathing for the dead and dying. We take that final journey and walk them where they can't walk. We breathe for them where they can't breathe and take them to their final resting place. But they are not inactive. They're not, you know, they're still animate, they're still creating things, they're still communicating and downloading to us. That's my belief, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And I've seen too many things and felt the shift in too many energies. The stories are numerous, um, to doubt that anymore. So yeah, the journey continues. The luta continua. The journey continues. We express ourselves through ceremony.
Yeah.
When I met you, Laura, and got involved in FACFO, I just felt like, oh, you know, when you find your people, them, you know,
Yes.
you
Yes.
find kindred spirits, you know,
Yes.
when you
Yeah.
find that energy on the planet and you'll say,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Um, and all that has happened since then, how you support me, encourage me, and challenge me and enable me. I just give so much thanks because that's what we need. We need the village to be active with each
Yeah.
other and
Yeah.
for each other. So it's always a joy for me to connect with you. You know, we've shared ceremonial work, we've
Yeah.
shared, you know, as you said, interviews, we've shared just soundboarding off of each other in terms of where we're at and where we need to go. So, you know, I always encourage people, just grow where you're planted and, you know, find who's in your area, find who's around you, because a lot of the time it's not that far away, you know,
Yes.
that person or that thing, you
Yes.
know, it's not that far away. And it's almost like too simple at times. You're like, hold on, isn't this supposed to be more hard? Isn't this supposed to be more difficult than it is?
Yeah. Yeah. I
You
agree
know,
with you.
mm,
It's like, you know, I think we're so used to working on our own, working individually, you know, and just kind of keeping going and keeping going. And sometimes you don't even know whether you're going in the right direction. I think that goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, you know, just kind of stepping, just step. And it has been so inspiring to meet you because I have been, you know, a lot of my life has been surrounded by people who, let's say, probably are not from the culture, not from this culture, but then also that are, but are not interested in the spiritual things. And so
absolutely.
often I've been like, yeah, but I know that there's more. But this, surely this is this, and that is that, and this makes sense. And this is a real spiritual work. And I'm often sort of guided to work with people from other communities. But inside me, I'm like, I just can't. I do. Obviously, I serve everybody. But there is something about our need that is so sorely lacking, that I believe that only we can provide. And that is the spiritual aspect of things.
Mm.
So if I can just break it down, what you actually do then is you perform ceremonies, like me, funeral celebrant. But if you could just explain it, you perform ceremonies, and what does that entail? And I'm leading to a bigger question. So, okay.
Okay, so the ceremonial work is really, so somebody will call, somebody's passed away, and they're not sure um, where to go from there. So with the initial interview is really about the deceased, where they are,
Yeah,
what stage we're at, because there's a lot of paperwork and red tape that you
yeah,
need to deal with, and one thing leads on to another. So really finding out where the client is at to know what needs to be done. Um, so and to connect with a funeral director as well, because that's going to be, if you know, the resting place of the deceased where
yeah,
they're going to be resting. Excuse me. And most importantly, to find out the cultural preference of the client and the deceased,
yeah.
and to know what type of ceremony they would like. Will it be a burial? Will it be a cremation? Will it be straight to graveside? You know, how, what type of service? Is it going to be in a church? Is it going to be in a chapel? So getting all the logistics organized. And I think as a celebrant, it takes a weight off of the client's mind.
Absolutely.
They're in grief. You know, they've been launched, as we were launched into a situation where they don't know this world and
Yeah,
what's going on. So and depending on the funeral director, you have inside knowledge as to, you know, what type of casket you can access, what kind of urn, you know, so you've got background knowledge. And sometimes um, funeral directors celebrate that, and some of them don't, because they actually want that control. So we're not promoted and supported completely, because in a way we're taking some of the work away from the funeral directors and making it more personalized.
yeah.
So it's kind of finding that balance in, because once the client books me,
Mm,
then I have almost like an authority then to question and
yeah,
to be able to deliver the service. And therefore I can go to the funeral director and give instruction as well as being instructed
mm,
about what will happen. If there's going to be music, if there's going to be flowers, you know, if there's going to be, sometimes we do straight to graveside,
mm,
what that looks like,
mm.
health and safety, but really making sure that the wishes of the deceased and the family are primary concern, and making sure that the day goes according to how they wish it to be. That is the
Abs-
important thing. And
Yes.
letting them know that they can have things like incense burning
Mm,
outside the church or chapel. They can have ancestral rites done. We can do libation pouring.
mm,
There's 9 nights support. As I said, in terms of dressing or washing the body, or, you know, all these rituals that we do, and some people know of them, some people don't. And but some people know that they want to do something. They might want to uh, dress them a certain way and put something in the casket, an ankh
yeah,
or, you know, crystal or whatever. You
yeah,
know, just letting them know that that's okay
yeah.
for them to do that. Sometimes if there's a church situation and you have to liaise with the minister, you
Mm,
know, that's another delicate balance which a celebrant needs to be aware of when you're going into church, you know, and building a rapport with ministers. A lot of them are nice, but you do get ones that really are anti the whole celebrant role. And especially once we start talking about ancestors or
yeah,
libation or incense, they really feel that that is their role, and they have the monopoly on that. I've had ceremonies where lots of different ministers and celebrants were asked to speak. And the family had to get up and really pull to order a minister that felt that he was going to go up there and just preach
Right.
to others and just use it as an opportunity to convert or
Mhm.
condemn or whatever. So I think as a celebrant, we are really there for the family and the deceased, and that's it. You know,
Yes.
we don't have no hidden agenda in that way. And I think because, you know, we're quite passionate about making that stand, we kind of cross the line that ministers can't cross, registrars can't cross. We
Yes.
can do ceremonies anywhere as well. So a lot of people don't realize that you don't actually have to go to a church. You don't have to go to a chapel.
Yeah.
I've you know, I do a few do-it-yourself ceremonies where you actually hire a community center and you
Yeah.
have your ceremony in there. You dress it how you want. You have people coming in how you want. Then you go to the burial ground or the cremation ground. You have a small service, and then you come back
Come
and do
back.
your reception.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think as a celebrant, our role is vast in the sense that we have to have a lot of information in our head about what is possible so that we can give our clients the best options possible. So not only do we do the officiant role of actually conducting the ceremony, which is I want to say it's got legal aspects to it in terms of receiving the body, in terms of committal, in terms of, you know, that final farewell. These are things that have to be done.
Yes.
The body is in our care, the dearly beloved is in our care. And as far as I'm concerned, they're royalty for the day. You know, I'm really passionate about making sure that they get served
Yeah.
well, you
Yeah.
know, and that the family don't have to worry about certain things. And in
Mm.
that regard, you know, you can work very well with the funeral director if they're on the same page as that, because that's their remit as well. They're very royal
Yeah.
about that. And so from that as well, as a celebrant, you may be giving grief support to the family.
Mm.
I like to meet with the family. If it's not on face to face, it might be on Zoom.
Mm.
But you know, often there'll be a member, a family member, or a couple of family members who you have to give some special attention to because they're
Yeah.
grieving.
Yes.
And because of the grief work that I've done previously, I do understand the importance of grieving because, you know, many of us in our culture now, we've come a little bit too British, a bit too English, you
Yes.
know, and so we're not grieving properly. We're doing that kind of, no, gotta hold it in,
Couple it. Fine. Yeah. All of that.
you know, and it's not good. It's not
Yeah.
healthy. You know,
Yeah.
grief isn't nice. It's messy. It's uncomfortable. You know, it's gritty. It's emotional, but it's a very important emotion that needs expression. And if we block it, it creates issues down the line. So part of the work that I do as a celebrant is deal with that grief management. And again, FACFO has been great for that because you know, we have a FACFO member who provides a grief cafe, and you know, you do grief counseling yourself as a grief doula, and you know that there's a resource there that I love with FACFO that people can tap into because grief doesn't just end on the day. In
No.
fact, you know, it's over time, over the weeks and months and even years.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get contacts from family members who are working through their journey, you
Yes.
know. And
Years later.
so a lot of the time there is a connection that's built up there. As many ceremonies as you do, the person will never forget you, you
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, you might get, you know, people showing up years later who are like, you know, I remember you
Yeah.
because of the work that is done. So I know it sounds like a lot, but I really want to communicate the care and the passion and the energy and the work that does go in on behind the scenes,
It's
you
a lot
know.
of work.
A
Mm.
lot of registrars and even celebrants themselves, they are just focusing on the day. I speak to some celebrants that just want to write the eulogy.
Yeah.
and they just want to write the script, and that's okay. But that's not what Tree Circle Ceremonies is about. That's not what I know, FACFO is about. We do that little bit extra because our community needs
Needs
it.
it, demands it, whether they know it or not, they demand it. Yeah.
So,
Whether
and
they,
I love the fact that as much as there is a little bit of, sort of suspicion, if you like, because a lot of people that come, obviously they're used to the traditional religious ceremonies. It's like,
yeah,
well, what are you doing? And they see the incense burning or see you dressed in your whites, because I don't wear, well, I don't often wear black.
yes,
I do at times, but I will just wear white or a different color of choice depending on the family. And I can honestly say that, religious or not, I've had people who've come up several times and say they've never experienced so much spirituality outside of the church before.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
they realize that that passion and that energy is actually within us,
yeah,
and spirituality predates any religion,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
like to remind people of that. So don't shy away and think that, you can't do this because it's not in the church, or because it's not a minister, or
yes,
a imam, or, from other religious denominations. So it just gives that opportunity for us as a people to come together and
yeah,
heal together. And grief is a part of the process of life. Not to be afraid of grief. When I see the man then get up and talk about their dearly beloved, and it's crying and but they can't even breathe
yeah,
through their grief, and then you just see the family come around them and allow that. It's
yeah,
actually okay.
yeah,
The funeral day is going to be the one day in their life that you can actually properly grieve,
yeah,
get all
yeah,
ugly faced with your grief
yeah,
and get messy with your grief. And it's okay,
yeah.
you
It's
know.
welcomed, it's expected, isn't it? It's anticipated. What do you mean they weren't crying? What do you mean they weren't breaking down? What do you mean they didn't fall to their knees? Yeah. And we are such a passionate people. We are an expressive people, which is why when we hold grief in, it actually physically harms our bodies. We need to
Definitely,
release it. Yeah.
definitely,
And I always
definitely.
remember there was one time when we were on a Zoom together, and I don't know, I think maybe I or somebody wept, somebody was crying. And you said that that was the greatest form of libation.
Absolutely.
Never
Yes,
forget that.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's real libation, huh?
That's
That's
the
real
real,
love. That's
yeah,
real love. Because you're grieving and you're praising at the same time, because you're only barling like that because you loved the person,
yes,
right?
yes,
You loved the person. You can't pretend grief.
yeah,
You can't pretend that. So when you're giving of yourself in that way, that's the perfect libation,
yeah,
to give and honor not just the person, because all these rituals are done to help the person travel well.
yes,
Another issue, spiritual aspect that's going on in our society, is that we're actually holding our dearly departed ones to the physicality of the earth,
yes,
because they're not being released, they're not being sent off, they're not being carried over, and that again creates a different aspect of situations. You want to talk about duppy? Why have we got duppy? Why have we got that? That is because we have not been allowed to do our proper funeral rites. So not only are you burying your dead, your that is there, but you're actually grieving for all of those
yeah.
that never got grieved for as well. So it is a piece of work that
It-
needs to be done, that is being done, through this journey. Yeah.
And this is why I love to talk to you in a nutshell. Like, this is it. It's all well and good me saying it, but when you say it, it hits,
Okay. Thank
and
you.
it's necessary because there is so much fear when it comes to our spirituality. This is in our DNA. We have nothing to fear. We're coming up to the top of the hour. We're going to come back after the break. But when we come back, I want to talk to you more about the spiritual side of things, the fears that we have, where these fears have come from, and how we protect ourselves, or whether it's necessary, things that we do. For example, I'll just take us up to the top of the hour. I did a funeral service a few months ago. Was it this year? This year. And I had been told, when you come out of the cemetery, do this and do that, do this and do that. When I came out of the cemetery, I was in such a rush to go and get my coach to go home that I didn't do what I had been told. And my journey home was one thing after another, which even involved breaking a tooth on a piece of chicken skin and being stalked. It was it was a journey and a half.
Sorry.
Right. Yeah. So, when we come back, it would be really nice to just kind of, let's discuss that, because I know that there are a lot of fears. I'm not going to say that the fears are unfounded, but what I want to discuss is whether the fears are actually genuinely ours.
Yes.
No?
Yes. And also what we can do, because I think, the ancestors are very forgiving. Our spirit guides are very forgiving. If you forgot to do it outside the gate, I would have stopped somewhere at a church or at another cemetery or an open, I would have stopped somewhere and spoke to the land and got that ceremony done. So I think not to get caught up in too much of the technical stuff, because you forgot, but maybe it needed to be done somewhere else. And I think the aspect is just to get it done. So when you realize, I stopped, then you answer the next guidance. Okay, well, where else can I do this again? Does it need to be done at a crossroad? Does it need to be done at another cemetery or church space, or where? And continue with it, so at least you're complete.
Yes. Well,
that way.
I had just shown disregard. I was like, okay, when I get home, I'll do it all then, Let's just get to the front door, and then I'll do everything I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, but then you're carrying all of that home, and you're not supposed to.
That's it.
So it is about, all of that open space that you passed to get to where you're going. Sometimes I will just do that. If I'm guided to, I'll just pull over at a space and go and do whatever it is I need to do in that moment. And just trust in the guidance that universe knows best.
Yes.
What do we know?
That's it. Who are we and what do we know? We're here to guide, that's what we're here to do, and to support, and to listen and to learn as well, because it's an ongoing journey for us as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
definitely. Okay. All right. Well, what we're going to do now is see out this hour. Well, I don't know. I was going to play Wolves and Leopards by Dennis Brown. What do you think?
Oh, go for it.
Okay, here we go. All right. Yes, as they say, Jaja, give us life to live, so let us live. Absolutely. And now is the time. Do you know what? You are listening to, and I don't even know whether I said this in part one, you are listening to DJ LP. I am live on Passion Radio, talking at this time of day about dying, death, and grief. I want to thank you for joining me. And I was just playing, right, Jaja, give us life to live by the Wailing Souls. All right. Now, I know that I talk every week about aspects that are to deal with dying, death, and grief, but really, the work is about living. Our work is about the quality of life and getting the best out of life whilst you can, recognizing that you are alive and living, as opposed to merely surviving. And yeah, I say that, and it's more kind of easier said than done sometimes, because systemically and unapologetically, we are living in a world that is not geared toward us and our needs, which is why we step forward to do the work that we've come to earth to do, to stamp our foot in the ground and say, we are here. You will respect us. This is how we work. This is how we live. This is what we need. And this is what we are doing. We're not asking for permission. We are doing what we have come here to do. And on that note, I want to reintroduce you to my friend and my sister in Aama, who stands by my side here, stamping her foot too, doing what she came to earth to do. Aama, thank you so much for joining us for the second half.
Oh, greetings. Glad to be here, sis.
Beautiful. It's lovely to have you. And as I said in the break, I think I'm going to have you a lot more often, because
Oh,
yes, what you're speaking about is what I wish to speak about every week, you know, without fail. I want to talk about our African spirituality and the importance of it. I also recognize that for some people it's a bit too much. Why do you
mm,
think that is? Where do you think the fear comes from?
mm. Well, we are, people in the diaspora, aren't we? We've taken a journey. I think sometimes we forget we're in the belly of the beast.
Mm,
That's the reality of where we are. We're in a very hostile environment. And within that hostility, they have um, spent a lot of time, energy, and money on ensuring that we are disconnected from our roots, from our ancestry. In slavery and through our journey from the Caribbean, our language was taken away, our customs were taken away. We are disconnected. So a lot of us don't even resonate with that term, ancestors. They're like, what they see ancestors as duppy, as ghosts, as what we call spookism.
yeah.
So that we're spooked by our own power. And can you imagine, our own power scares us, right? So if we're scared of our own self, then what about the unseen energies that are around us all the time? My journey through spirituality is that spirit used to trouble me from a child, and used to scare me from a child. I came through the church.
Right.
My parents, my mother was a Methodist, my grandmother was a Baptist. So all of this spiritual aspect didn't really start to make sense to me until I got involved with Rastafari. And back in the old days, when Rastafari came about, you'd have reasoning circles where you could just sit down and reason on a higher order. And within those reasonings, just having discussions on the Bible, having discussions about where we are on the lands over here really helped um, make sense of a lot of things for me. And even the interpretation of the Bible, so giving it an African perspective as opposed to the blonde haired, blue eyed Christ that is projected onto us. Um, just giving that an African perspective and just think, is God, you know, black or white? In fact, let's take the color of God out of the picture. Jesus was in a hot land, he was born in a hot land. So why is he depicted as a person of light skin? So once all that questioning started for me, it meant that as the steps went on, everything else that I had known started to kind of crumble away. And I went through a very scary stage where everything that I knew, it was like the carpet was just pulled away from underneath me. What is it that I know? I had to question everything that I knew. Um, and went through a lot of anger about that because it's lies. It's just waking up to the lies, the constant stream of lies that's
Mm,
been fed us, not even just as a child living in society and being talked about Easter bunnies and Christmas and all of that kind of lies, but also the lies about being a person of color, an African woman living in the West. and the lies that we're all equal, and race doesn't matter, and every day that it's hostile out there for us. So I think the fear of our own spirituality comes about through the trauma that we have been through. We've been taught that voodoo is wrong. We've been taught that our spirituality is seen as devil worship, and it's satanic, and you say the word pagan or witch or any of these things, and we don't think about the healers. you know in the Caribbean today, there's many people that don't go to doctor. They
Mm.
don't go to the doctor before they pay money and go doctor. They're going up into the bush. What do you call that? Do you know what I mean? That's people who were dealing with nature,
Yeah.
and so that woke up in me from quite a young age, is that the earth, nature, has an energy, that is alive. It's an actual being, an entity, and it's the one thing that connects us globally to all the indigenous peoples on the planet. And
Yes.
if we look at the indigenous people on the planet, actually we've all been abused,
Yeah.
and you could actually say that Africans are the better off even with the trauma of slavery, because at least you can go to Africa and see black people. What about the
Yes.
first Americans? What about the Aborigines? What about all these
How-
people, the Incas, the people that have held so much knowledge and sacredness of the land that has just been wiped out? And but the one-on-ones are still there saying, no, we want our sacred lands back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if they're saying that in the first Americans, if they're saying that as the dreamscape in indigenous Aborigines, if they're saying that, what more can we say? And what the blindness, the global blindness about African spirituality, what is that? Yeah. What is that exactly? Where all of a sudden, just they just can't see us. Why? So for me, just I always see myself as like my star sign is Pisces, two fish swimming in opposite directions. So I've always got this thing going on. I'm always swimming upstream. Yeah,
It's
I'm
really-
salmon. If you, I'm one of them big fish that want to swim up against the current
Yes.
all the time. So
Have
I'm
to.
like, okay, I need to look at this. I
Mm.
need to look at this. And it's through looking at those journeys that I found people like Maladoma, that I found Credo Mutwa, that I found,
Mm.
these people, these indigenous ones that are dealing with some serious, can I say magic? Serious spirituality, and indigenous spirituality as well. Um, the fact I always what I always remember is that story of the Dogon nation in Africa, who are an oral nation. They don't read and they don't write. And I always say those are the true gods on the planet. Gods and
Yeah.
goddesses are the
Yeah.
ones that don't read and write, because
Yeah.
it's now been proven that once you learn to read and write, there's a part of your spirituality that you can't
Shut.
access.
Yeah.
It locks
We
it
lose
off,
it. Yeah.
right?
Gone.
So the Dogon, back in the day when they were seen as primitive and there were debates about whether they were even human or not, um, talked about the stars. They predicted Sirius B. They predicted the Orion Belt. And the Western scientists, and intellectual ones boo-hooed them and rubbished them until they managed to create a telescope powerful enough to actually see it with them own eye.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that tells me the basis of so-called Western civilization. It's not, and somebody broke down that word to me. It's civil lies, it's civilized lies,
Yeah.
and that's what they deal with, So if we just park that to one side for a minute,
Yeah.
that's all lies. So we don't even need to go into that, because anything they had discovered
Yeah.
was there already, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, we have knowledge within us that we have still yet to explore, because
Yeah.
we're so busy trying to justify ourselves to the civilized ones that don't know, that
Mm.
we're not paying enough attention to ourselves. And I think my journey through spirituality, and definitely through working with death and grief and dying, is really about exploring that unknown.
Yes.
You know, what is this unknown, this scary stuff that we've been told we shouldn't touch? And
Yeah.
you know, my curious spirit is just like, let me just have a peek.
Let's just see. Let's just see. Just a little bit. Show me what's behind the curtain. Just a peep. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and it's very true. What is behind the curtain? Because every October we have that thinning of the veil. You know,
Mm.
every solstice and equinox we have a vortex opening up. You know,
Mm.
and these are all natural phenomenons. Religion has hijacked the natural phenomenons on the planet. The
Yeah.
calendar is wrong. They've
Yeah.
rewritten the calendar. You know, they've done it in plain sight
Yeah.
as well. So even when we are, you know, doing our own searching,
Mm.
we've still got that conditioning going on of the civil liars.
Mm.
But we also have this yearning, this kind of insistence that we need to do as well, and what we can do. And we will make mistakes, as you were saying earlier in the program before. We will
Yeah.
make mistakes. There's certain things that we need to do and we're not doing it. I am constantly asking for forgiveness. You know, if I do something wrong, if I say something wrong, please forgive me,
I'm
because
sorry. Yes.
me no know, I'm just a follow what me think say me follow, you know?
Mm.
So, and I think it's really important that we have that kind of relationship with what's behind the veil, with our spiritual guides, with our ancestral guides, with our spiritual high committees.
Yes.
We have that kind of relationship with them, where we have that, you know, look, you know, like I would say to you, look, if I upset you, sis, just let me know. If you think I'm doing something foolish, just let me know. We need to have that
Yeah.
relationship
Yeah.
with these energies. And what I have found over the years is that the more you have that relationship and you start communicating with that, is the more you'll get something back,
That's
you
it.
know, and that you get that realization. So, you know, now that that situation happened to you with the graveside, and you were saying like you were supposed to perform certain things and you
Yes.
didn't, and
Yeah.
because of that, who can't hear must feel, and all of
Yes.
that kind of vibe, that ain't
Yes.
happening again.
That's no way. No,
Right,
no
that ain't
damn
happening
way.
again.
No.
We are, I always say, we are hardy as picnic. That's how we
Yeah.
stay. We're
Yeah.
hardy as picnic. And I just always say to people, I do what I do because I don't want no more licks anymore. I'm done.
No, that's
If
it.
I'm told to do something, I do it. And that's it.
Yeah.
You know, if
Yeah.
I got to pull over on a hard shoulder somewhere and do my thing and get
Yeah.
it done, I'm doing it. Do you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Because, you know, there's a whole nother world going on here, and we are babies. It doesn't matter how big we get. You could be 122 and still a child
Yes.
on this planet, you
Yes.
know, what we're living here now. So we're never too big, we're
Mm.
never too wise, we're never too knowledgeable.
Mm.
And in fact, we know too much.
Yeah, we do.
Um,
Yeah. It's in us, this is our knowledge. I just have to apologize for any noise in the background. My grass is being cut. I've been waiting for over a week. It's way up high, and he's decided to come and do it right now.
okay, okay, I can't hear anything my
Oh, you
end.
can't? Oh, that's fantastic. All right. Second of all, we've got a message from Andy, who has said, this is why our history has not been written and researched more by our own people and published more. So he's saying this is why we ourselves haven't done the work to make sure it's out there. This is the reason why it's kind of hidden from our reality. It's really loud for me and I'm struggling. I really hope that you're okay and
I
you
can hear
can't
you
hear.
fine. I
That's
can hear
fine.
you fine.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think it really is a matter of like, to each it's an individual journey.
Mm.
And as you've said, the people and the right books have been there, but the people as well, you've had the privilege of working with Malidoma and Sabonthi. The right people have been there for you at the right time to help you along that journey. And I think that's another thing that we need to realize, is that all we need to do is take that first step forward. A lot of us, when we were younger, heard things, saw things, and shut it down out of fear. And so we won't be approached until we say, yeah, I'm ready now. And then when that time comes, you better know that those that are needed will just step in and help guide the way. And I believe that you're one of those people, Aama.
Mm. Well,
Because,
it's interesting that you say that you'll get to that place where you're ready, and I didn't actually get to that place. I remember being at an event, and it was a funeral reception, and the elder that was there, I was waiting for him to bless the food, and he
right,
wasn't blessing the food. And I went up to him at one point because I could see people starting to approach the table and gonna eat. So I said, humble apologies, but is it time to bless? And he just looked at me and he went, well, you got the calling, so you go and bless.
ooh,
So for me, it wasn't a situation that I said, "Oh yeah, now I'm ready to go and pour libation, or I'm ready to go and do a ceremony, or I'm ready." It was never like that for me,
yeah,
and that's why I always say that this journey chose me, because I was put into situations where my friends said, "My grandmother's died. Amma, will you do the service?"
yeah,
Now I can't say no, because
yes,
I've been put in that position to ask.
yeah,
Somebody's asked me to do that. An elder has now said, I got to go and put, what am I going to do? Turn around and say, and argue and say, no, so it is about us just standing up and turning up.
yeah,
Do we ever feel worthy? Do we ever feel, it's the right thing? No, we don't. But the reality is, not my will, the greater will be done.
that's it.
It's not about me and whether I feel this or feel that. you
Yeah,
know it's about the fact that we've been asked to do a thing,
yeah,
and once we do that to the best of our ability, we're doing what we need to do.
that's it. Yeah, I agree. And so that brings us nicely, I think, to your course. You have
Yes.
created a course, yes,
Oh,
so that you
wow.
can guide.
Yes. Yes. So I'll give thanks, because that you've really helped me on that journey as well. Um, I remember you saying, you need to train Amachade. And I was like, what? And that was a real journey for me, just to kind of get to that space of accepting the task at hand, and then getting down to writing it. It was a real challenge to get the course written. I've never done anything like that before. But by the start of this year, I'd managed to complete and took my first couple of students on a training course to be a tree circle celebrant, funeral celebrant. And yeah, I think we all went on the journey together, because it was a journey for me and them. But I'm really pleased to say that they are now working within Tree Circle, and one of the celebrants in particular is definitely working alongside, is under the wing of Tree Circle Ceremonies, and I'm getting ready now to plan the next course coming up. And also within that, I think, because there's two aspects to being a celebrant, there is kind of the professionalism, which I really want to bring people forward. I want to provide excellent celebrant service. And then there's the spiritual aspect as well. So what I would like is a situation where anybody can come forward and train to be a celebrant. If you want to know about the spiritual aspects and how that can be expressed through the ceremony, that's another aspect of the training that can be taken on board as a different module. So I'm just working out the balance, because you don't need the spiritual aspect. And I don't want to say, well, this is the way that you do it and there's no other way, because I think we've all come with pieces of the puzzle. But there is a quality and there is a standard which I think we all need to adhere to. And I kind of stand under the umbrella of FACFO in that sense, to provide that excellence and to provide that service, so that we're operating at a standard. We're operating at a standard.
Yeah, I think it's really important. When I was training to become a death doula and training to become a funeral celebrant, there was nothing for us. There was no recognition of us. We didn't exist. We weren't important. Our needs were not considered, and I was really upset. I was really deeply upset. And then one day I remember that I was in a friend's car and we were discussing it. And then the thought came to my mind that, well, how can they teach you about yourself? What do they know about you anyway? All that you need is inside you, and only somebody with what you have can show you where to look for it, And it's as you were saying as well in the first hour, that there are so many different countries on the continent, and every man do his thing a little way different, is what our saint Errol Dunkley once said, And so for that reason, it's a matter of, yes, as you've said, laying down this is what needs to happen, and then being open about the spiritual aspect, because then within that, anything can happen, And I think that's what I like about the fact that you've got this course, is that it's available to everybody, and regardless of their color and their age and their background. There is so much that could be learnt by those of other cultures by coming to engage and find out how we do our stuff and why, because everything that we do has a reason behind it.
Absolutely. And to allow people to express themselves, because every culture has got their own funeral rites. They've got their own funeral expressions, their expressions of the dead. And I think we, just to kind of expand our horizons, take it out of the confines of strictly religious, and be able to expand ourselves in a way just so that we're always safe, always considerate of those that are around. I don't believe in doing anything that people are uncomfortable with, because a ceremony should carry everybody on board. Yes. I'm not one of these people who have a ceremony and you kind of come away thinking, well, what was that and what was I party to? Yes. No, I'm definitely into writing a ceremony that is inclusive.
Yes.
Yeah. Everyone. And when you come away from there, you should have a deeper understanding. If you didn't know what libation was, you'll know what it is at the end of it. If you didn't understand what the incense was for, you'll understand that. What does Rastafari mean? It means head creator, might of the Trinity. It's Amharic. It's one of the oldest languages on the planet. It's important that people understand that, because Rastafari is kind of bandied around now as, it's trendy. Yes. But actually it's a magical word. Those words are ancient words, and just chanting Rastafari and chanting those word sounds creates a vibration that helps us with our healing and resetting the process. So I'm really passionate about taking people along with me on the ceremony process, with the guidance of the family and all that is required to take this deceased on their final earthly journey.
Yeah. And I can honestly say that I've had the privilege of being at your ceremonies and seeing how you guide the congregation through. It is, the word that you used, it is actually quite magical, because I've seen people come up to you after your ceremony and say to you, wow, I've never seen anything like that. I've never experienced anything like that. There was an Asian guy who came up to you and he said, we have our ways, but this was something different and I haven't seen anything like this before. Okay, I've got messages that are coming through here from Andy. He's saying the sooner we start debunking the European mishistory, and there it is, it's mishistory. He says, in reply to something else, he's saying that it will not happen because fear pervades their thoughts. Okay, I'm not quite sure, but yes, there is a lot of fear. And I suppose the only way that we can accomplish or overcome the fear of others is to make sure that there are videos like this that are available, to make sure that we're having conversations like this so that people can learn and realize that we are normal people, you know. As we say, we're asking for forgiveness. We make mistakes, we do our thing, but we carry on. And so, you know, the information's there, the help that is there. So yeah, he's also said that what you've just said with regards to Rastafari were also his thoughts with regards to Rastafari. And it is very misunderstood. It is, you know, word power. And in a world where words are spells, you know, we find that whenever you're in a group of us, if someone says Jah, everybody instinctively, without even thinking about it, you just say Rastafari, and it just rises the vibration of the people. Even if we don't know what house we're from, you know, even if we don't know what the, you know, the foundations are of Rastafari, we know that when we utter those words, something lifts inside us. Why does it lift? Maybe because we are a great and wonderful people. Maybe.
And I find that because the more we return to our ancient tongue, the more energy and power. So, you know, a lot of ceremonies, I will use the word ashe, you know, because again, that's a West African term. And I think the more we tap into our own tongue, you know,
Yes.
and express that in whatever way, wadada, you know, use the terms of umoja, you know, Swahili. I think, you know, once we use our tongue in whatever, it can be just one word, it doesn't even matter. And just to understand that even the word amen is amen, amen ra, you know, to complete that sentence and just give it the kinetic influence and energy. So I think, yeah, for Rastafari, it taught me word sound is power, you know, and the beginning of the Bible is in the beginning was the word.
The word, yeah.
You know, and the sound of that word, the utterance of word brings things into being. So I'm very deliberate about how the script is written, how we call on certain ancestors and who's called on, when it's called and how it's called, because I just think all those little things do have an influence. And even down to what we spoke about with fear. You know, fear is a necessary emotion. It gives us, you know, that kind of defense, fight or flight mode, and we need that. I think it's definitely overstimulated in this environment. And so, you know, what we have to remember is fear, the acronym, false evidence appearing real. So a lot of the time when we are in fear, we're in fear of the possibility of something happening that hasn't happened. You know, and we spend our time worried about this thing that hasn't happened and what might happen if it happens. And they've got us spinning around in this madness of the what ifs, the shoulda, woulda, couldas, you know, whereas in actual fact, you know, if you think of when you're dealing with spirituality, that you're actually dealing with an elder, you know, sometimes, well, for me anyway, you know, when mummy was alive, if I knew mum was coming round, me, I quick tidy up and push things in cupboard and make things neat because I don't want mum to see me in a certain space. And I think, yeah, there's an element of fear there because I want to make sure things are correct, you know, and that's not a bad thing, right? So I think in terms of our ancients and our elders and spirit guides and all of those things, there's a healthy fear because you know when you show up, you've got to be correct, you know, and there is that thing of, oh my gosh, am I dressed right? Have I got everything that I need on? Am I presenting properly? You know, and that's a good thing. So I would say feel the fear and do it anyway, because you know, fear is a necessary vibe. It shows that, you know, you're alive and you're tuned in and you're respectful,
Yeah.
but it shouldn't freeze you, it shouldn't stagnate you to the point where you're not doing it. So there is an element of feeling the fear and doing it anyway, you know. And I had to work through a lot of fear, and do fear busting exercises to actually work through that process of even entering into ceremony. And going on rituals and retreats was all part of that, you
Yeah.
know, signing up for those rituals and retreats and working with through and with people is all part of how do we manage our fear, you know, how do we work through it, you
Yeah.
know. That is a thing, because, you know, there is a fear of death, you know.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
but that it's a good thing. Right,
yeah.
it's a good
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
you know.
It is. It's. I think it becomes unhealthy though when it kind of dominates. It dominates the. Oh, I don't know how to put it. You know, this fear of death. I think it's good until it restricts us from actually talking about it and thinking about it and planning for it and being prepared for it. I think that's when the fear is kind of all right, it's a bit out of hand now, because I believe that there was a time when we used to celebrate the transition of death, and we used to see it, we used to welcome it maybe in some ways. And maybe it was a time of great elevation spiritually, as far as we know. The body is very heavy and we use the body. I always say, this is my spaceship. If I don't have this body, I can't talk to you the way that I'm talking to you now, you know? And when I no longer need the body and I can lay the body aside, then I will still continue to exist, just in a different way. I will still continue to talk and do whatever it is that I can do, but it just looks different. The relationship continues, but it looks different. And it's a transition for everybody. So, yeah, I hear what you're saying about fear. And I think fear in the right place and fear in its place is fantastic, if only we can understand what it is and how to use it. And I think as well, that's death as well. If we understand what death is and recognize how to use it, how to sort of, you know, work with this facilitation as opposed to fearing it and staying away from it. And that is, as you alluded to before, perhaps why we do have duppy and, you know, spirit phenomena happening that fears, that brings about the fear. I suppose it's like a cycle, isn't it, that has to be broken. And I think that we break it through communication, through education, through going on courses like yours, so that we can understand more about death and how we can facilitate it on this side, so that the person is perhaps met on the other side.
Well, another thing that I do, because the course is really very specific to being a funeral celebrant. But another
Okay.
thing that I do is grief work as well, because I think it's with the grief work where you do transcend and you do start to unpack some of those fears that you're talking about, emotional blockages or resistance. Some people just fear crying or just acknowledging what the grief really is. So I've been doing this. I haven't done it this year because I've been focusing on getting the training done. But grief in the calabash
Ah,
is a process where we actually come and tell our grief stories, you know, but with a view to how do we manage that. So it's not just a talking section, although we're storytelling, but we're looking at the messages that's coming out of that for us. We're looking at how where grief sits within our bodies, how
yes.
we respond to grief, and the processes of bringing it out. So that's the other side of it, which is much more gritty
Mm,
than the celebrant work. It's much more raw, and it really does kind of get to the village, you know, because there's a part of me why I do this work is about raising the vibration of our collective village.
yes.
you know, and dealing with grief is one of the cornerstones, I feel, of really settling us into that mode of village, because we kind of have this vibe about, yeah, we want to be village and we want to be a connected community, but we're not prepared to sit down with each other and
Yeah,
hear each other's stories, and also offer our own stories, or just hold space
yeah,
for each other to unpack those grief stories. So that's another mission of mine, is to create space.
yeah,
And I just did a ritual with some sisters for the solstice out in the New Forest. We went just and found a lake in the New Forest, and we dealt with a lot of healing the trauma of our parents,
yeah,
you know, that has left us, because many of us have this imprint of, you know, a lot of these fears and a lot of these conditionings have come through our upbringing, and which is a direct response to how our parents, you know, the traumas that our parents have come in with. And you know, there's some truths that are written in the Bible in terms of, you know, these experiences are visited and on the first and second generations. So we
mm,
know it takes, like, you know, a couple of generations for these traumas to work itself out of us. And because for us, we haven't even started to address a lot of these issues,
yeah,
it's going on and it's generational trauma that we're dealing with. And
yeah,
I do feel that a lot of the time it's now, you know, to stop that. And I'm touching on that. I know it kind of moves away from the celebrant and the funeral celebrancy, but grief is a thing that we really need to give space to within
yeah,
our communities, within our own personal developments.
yeah,
And so there's an aspect of Tree Circle, of me, Amashade, who I need to provide that work. And I'm still undecided
mm,
as to whether it's actually going to come through Tree Circle, or I'm going to find another avenue for it to come through, because I really want the celebrant work to be quite specific. So
yes.
I'm still waiting for the intel to let me
Okay,
know.
we're waiting patiently, but we're waiting. But it's so true, like you said it before, and the same is for me. Yes, I love the you know, end of life transition stuff. I love funeral celebrant. I love arranging funerals, washing, dressing, love, but my heart is in the grief. And as you said, that's the gritty, that's the work. And I just, I love that. I love that. Our listener, maybe our only listener at this moment, Andy, he says, only those who are unprepared, only those who are unprepared fear death. It's not the end, it's only part of the journey. And we must be ready for the next transition to happen at any time. This life is not ours. And he goes on to say, I'm very tired. I'm rambling and I'm on the bus. Oh, you've gone on mute, Aama.
Yeah, I'm saying thank you for your rambling. It's wonderful, you know, because that's all part of it, just the sharing. And what brings to mind is, you know, Black Panther, you know, that beautiful scene in the film where the
Yes,
elder says, you know, if I haven't prepared you for my death, then I haven't done anything as a parent, you know, to, you know, so the ultimate aim of the parent is to prepare their children for their death. And
yes.
unfortunately, we are still in this situation where our parents won't talk to us about death. They won't talk to us about
Mom, you're
dying,
dead.
or, you
Yeah,
know, they
yeah,
won't go through that. So, but these are all indicators of where we need to find the strength within the younger generation and the up and coming ones, to actually sit mum and dad or grandparents down even, and
yes,
actually have those difficult conversations.
yeah,
And my mum was a nurse, so I was blessed to have those conversations with her and
yeah.
speak to her. But even so, as much as we spoke about death and what she wanted and what she didn't want and how it was going to go, she didn't make a will, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
You know, so even though we had these conversations,
Mm,
there was still another jump that needed to be made in terms of the ultimate prep.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's my mission now just to kind of close that gap
Yes.
in terms of having it as a conversation. So again, thank you, Laura, for like having these platforms available to us so that
No.
we can, just have a talk about this. We're on a rapport about this, grief and death and dying,
Yeah.
and we need, more spaces and places where we can talk openly and
Yeah.
freely about
We
what
do.
happened for us.
Yeah. And I had a video on TikTok, and I was laughing through the video, and somebody had said, I don't understand what you're laughing for. And I just thought to myself, I see the joy in this work, and it is something that when you get it, it's like everything else melts away because you see the beauty of it, and the necessity and the potential in our brothers and sisters to rise up through this transition. And yes, it's like, again, what you were saying in the first hour. Was it the second hour when you said you couldn't tell the elder, well, you know what, you're the elder, you go and pour libation and open. You can't do that. So for us to sit our elders down and just say to them, you know what, we want to talk about your death, for them to turn around and say, what, you want me for dead? It's that now you have to kind of overcome that, and you're talking to an elder. And how do you do that respectfully and say, yes, I don't want you to die, but I want to be prepared for it. And like you, my mum was a nurse as well. So in the household, my parents were always talking about death, but they never spoke about grief.
There you go.
Never knew about grief. When grief did lick me, flipping heck, it's a serious thing, Yeah. And so I think that's what sort of brings me to this work, is to just make sure that there are platforms and spaces where we can talk without judgment, and talk if we need to, and be ugly crying, and be frank and truthful, and to be able to say, you know what, uncle, dad, mum, even sister was not a nice person.
Yes, that's right.
Because there's that thing, never speak ill of the dead. Our trauma will kill us.
So yeah, and that brings me to the next point of creating safe spaces where those kind of conversations can happen, because we've got elders that are going to their grave holding on to trauma that they haven't ever spoken or released.
Yes.
And I think we have this myth that if we don't speak about it, then it's okay, and it kind of just disappears with me in death. But unfortunately, we are connected through DNA.
Yes.
And we're now coming to the awareness of our fifth dimensional realities, is that we never die. Do you know what I mean? Our being lives on. And when somebody does pass away, and whatever your relationship with them is, if you're close to them, then you will feel an impact within your own DNA, within your own psyche. With that person, there is a connection, and that connection needs to be realigned and balanced, healed, severed if possible. But sometimes I think you can't. If you're connected. But I do think there is a way to balance. There is a way to realign that energy and bring it into a space of positive impact, as opposed to it being disruptive. In interacting with it. So that's another level. That's another dimension of grief, death, and dying. And that's a whole thing all to itself, when you're dealing with the grief and the trauma, post-traumatic slave syndrome, and just everything that goes on with us as a people.
We are coming to the top of the hour. I want to invite you back again to let's talk further about trauma and grief. I think that would be really good if we could do that. A part 2, and then a part 10.
This is part 3.
Yes, just go through it all.
I'd be honoured to, and thank you to the listeners, the ones that are vocal and the ones that are silent and just taking this in. And anytime, I know you're sending this out on many different platforms. So anytime, wherever this reaches you, if something comes up, then please feel free to just drop a line or tune in or
How do we
send
do that? How do we get hold of you? How do we get hold of the great Aama?
Please. Well, through Tree Circle Ceremonies, definitely.
Yeah.
That's .co.uk. I have a website. I am not too good on social media, although I do have a presence on Instagram, tree.circle. And I do have Facebook and all of those kind of things as a landing platform for you to see what I do. But I'm a people person, so feel free to contact me 0744 608 5672, or just email me ama@treecircleceremonies.co.uk, and of course through FACFO, through yourself,
Yeah.
and the FACFO crew. I just want to big everybody up for the work that is happening in FACFO and what is going on. Constant inspiration to me in the work that I do, and just the professionalism, and the excellence in the service delivery is where I want to be.
Yeah.
Really,
Perfect.
it's where I want to be. It's where I'm happy to position myself. Um, that's it. So yeah, giving thanks, sis.
Thank you so much for joining us. It has been an absolute pleasure. And you have just sort of effortlessly talked about my favorite subject, which is where my heart sits. And so my heart sits with you. Thank you so much, my darling sister. Thank you for listening to your ancestors and being guided and doing as you're told. And, when you're told as well, not hard is like me. And I just look forward to the future. I know that there's going to be a lot of transition coming shortly, and we are in place and we endeavor to stay in place. And I think that people who do the work that we do need to be supported. We need to be recognized.
Yeah, the healers need healing, right?
They do.
The
And
healing.
I don't think people are going to realize how important this work is until they are personally hit with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's an awakening on the planet. There's definitely an awakening. And so I think, I'm glad I've come here today and just sat with you all, because it's kind of made me realize the importance of, just doing the grief work, how it all kind of knits together, I think. Because sometimes you're kind of working on this project or this, and you forget, okay, actually, if I do that, then I need to do this, and to see how it all knits together. So yeah, it's always good to have that confirmation and affirmation.
Brilliant. Okay, well, let's end this hour with Dennis Brown's The Promised Land.
Yay!
Okay.